Here at Swarovski Optic, we realize a lot goes into mounting your rifle scope on your rifle, making the two work together properly to make that shot out in the field. One of the terms that's very important in that process that we're going to discuss today is range of adjustment.
Range of adjustment in a rifle scope means how far the reticle can go up and down in elevation or side to side for windage. Obviously, when you're looking through a rifle scope, you see a round view. But what actually is going on is the crosshair can move usually within a square-shaped area. And it's important to realize that the intersection of the crosshair cannot go outside this square-shaped area. It can stay anywhere within the boundaries of it.
One of the other things to think about is all rifle scope manufacturers use different types of ranges of adjustment. Here we see some of the ones we typically have here at Swarovski.
Ranges of adjustment can be round in shape or take the form of squares or rectangles. This is a typical adjustment range, the round one of our Z3 series. We use square and rectangular shapes in our Z5 and Z6 series. One of the facts of rifle scope magnification is that the higher the magnification, the more range of adjustment is lost. So in our higher powered rifle scopes, Swarovski has managed to come up with a way to make a rectangular adjustment range so you can get more elevation that you normally could get out of a rifle scope, but at the expense of a small bit of windage adjustment.
Which obviously is a huge advantage to the long distance shooter to have more of that range of adjustment.
Exactly.
There's a couple of terms we need to define today to kind of help make this process a little bit more understandable, and that's the bore axis of the rifle and the optical axis of the rifle.
The bore axis is actually the rifle barrel itself and where it's pointing downrange. Normally when you mount a rifle scope on a rifle, the bore will be pointing somewhere within this range of adjustment.
And the optical axis is actually where the reticle is pointed.
The idea is when you're sighting in is to bring the reticle together with the bore axis. So the optical axis and the bore axis will line up perfectly.
In a perfect situation, if your scope is mounted correctly onto the rifle and things line up the way they should, your bore should be well within the range of adjustment of the scope.
As you sight in the rifle scope, what you're doing is bringing the reticle to the position where the rifle barrel is being pointed at. So when you make your adjustments, you want to end up like this. So as we start our sighting in process, this is the picture you're going to see through the rifle scope. After you take your first shot may end up there. What we are now going to do is make turret adjustments so that our optical axis will line up with the bore axis. After we've done that, we've aligned the bore axis with the rifle scope.
One thing to keep in mind is even though you moved your reticle to make this the point of impact, you've used up some of your range of adjustment, even though for today's purposes we're using this illustration. And when you're looking through your rifle scope, you'll still see the reticle in the center of the scope, just as you would in any type of range of adjustment with any scope. What you just saw was a perfect case scenario where the rifle scope is aligned properly with everything well within the range of adjustment. But it can happen where once your rifle scope is mounted, the barrel or the bore is pointed somewhere outside the range of adjustment.
When this happens, if you remember, if the rifle scope reticle is in the middle, you are trying to move the reticle with the turret adjustments to where that bore is pointing. But once the reticle gets to the edge of the range of adjustment, it cannot go any further and it cannot get to where the bore is pointing. This is an alignment issue. It is not an optical issue with the rifle scope. This can only be fixed by an adjustment of the rings and bases or the mounting system that's being used on the rifle scope. If you're at the rifle range and you are sighting in your rifle and you have found that you've moved your reticle until it stops, you've most likely run out of adjustment range and you use up all the adjustment range that the scope has. In effect, what you have to do now is look at your mounting system somehow to adjust your mounting system to change the angle of the scope. Basically, you're taking this whole adjustment range of the scope and moving it to somewhere where the bore is pointing. And the only way to do that is to adjust your rings and bases somehow.
So actually, we're just moving the rifle scope.
Correct. You're moving the rifle scope so it's pointing so that the optical axis is pointing to where the bore axis is.
One of the other situations that can come up that we'd like to talk a little bit about, and it's one of the reasons why we stress the importance of properly mounting your rifle scope right from the beginning, is the fact that the optimum way a rifle scope should work is utilizing the area close to within the middle of your range of adjustment. You do not want to have to use all of your range of adjustment and then be sighted in on the external edge.
The reticle inside of a rifle scope is housed inside of a tube called an erector system or a reverse system. When you make your elevation and windage turret adjustments and are moving the reticle around, that reverse system is moving around the inside of the rifle scope. There can be some situations where after you've made all of your adjustments and you get sighted in, say you're sighted in perfectly at whatever zero range you've chosen, the reticle can end up on the edge of the adjustment range. When reticles end up on any edge of an adjustment range, erratic grouping can occur. Sometimes consumers will call in and have issues after they mounted a rifle scope that their powering won't turn anymore, or their parallax will stop working, or they're getting erratic groups for some reason or other. One of the primary causes of this is the rifle scope being tightened too much or over tightened inside the rings. Rifle scope should be mounted inside of scope rings to a specified torque measured in inch-pounds. There are some manufacturers out there that make these. Some of the rifle scope ring and base makers also make them. Just to give you an idea, steel ring should be tightened to somewhere around 20 inch-pounds. Aluminum ring should be tightened to somewhere around 15 inch-pounds. Bases should be tightened to a receiver somewhere around 30 inch-pounds. But basically you should go by the manufacturer's recommendations, because it depends on the screws they're using and the metals they're using to what that specific inch-pound torque should be. But the bottom line we're getting at here is that if a rifle scope is over tightened, it can cause all kinds of problems. And just follow the recommendation of the manufacturer of how many inch-pounds your system should be tightened down.
Well, hopefully today we gave you some good examples of what can and can't happen in the field. You know, we do have some rifle scopes from time to time that can malfunction. After all, they are a mechanical device. But more often than not, a lot of the problems we see with sighting in comes from just aligning the whole system between the rifle scope, the rings and bases, and the rifle. So, you know, certainly it's good to know what your range of adjustment is, but as you see that you're outside that range of adjustment, you just might need to look at other options.